Hello again, Steven. So why did my commute to work go from like a minute to an hour and 15 minutes? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So like I said, we're going to be talking about the change in my work commute. We're outside currently, just outside of our apartment because the baby's sleeping inside right now, so didn't want to disturb him. Before we talk about the change in our commute, first we have to talk about a few things regarding travel nursing. So whenever we do a contract, we get an apartment wherever that contract is going to be. When finding an apartment, I'm a little bit picky with how far the apartment can be from the hospital. A couple of years ago when we were doing a contract in San Diego, we got an apartment that on paper was 35 minutes from the hospital, but when you factored in San Diego traffic, most days it would take me over an hour to get to work. That was not fun, so we decided to not let that happen again. So whenever we get an apartment now, it has to be 25 minutes factoring in rush hour from the apartment, no longer. The second thing regarding travel nursing, most contracts are 13 weeks or about 3 months. And we did that whole 3-month contract thing for about a year, but we realized that wasn't very cost effective. So what we started doing is we signed a 13-week contract, signed a 6-month lease, and then just planned to extend our contract to double the contract. So what we end up doing is we sign a 6-month lease in an apartment because that's cheaper, and then do a total of 6 months at the hospital, 3 months, and then a 3-month extension. And following this model has worked out for us so far, at least on the last 3 contracts it has. So on this contract, we did what we normally do. We found an apartment that was about a minute from the hospital. It's about a 15-minute walk, 1-minute drive. Signed a 6-month lease on the apartment, and then had a 3-month contract at the hospital. About a month and a half into the contract, this is about mid to late March, I was in an email conversation with somebody at the hospital, and I talked about extending my contract, and they said, we are not going to be extending contracts for any of our travelers. There's obviously no obligation for a hospital to extend a traveler's contract, but I guess it's unusual for this to happen for a couple of reasons. One, most hospitals that need travelers don't all of a sudden overnight stop needing travelers. They're often chronically short-staffed, so the hospitals that need travelers typically always need travelers. The second reason is I work very hard at my job. I make sure that I am a very good employee for every contract that I work, so whenever the time comes to ask for the extension, they're usually very happy to extend my contract. Regardless, the fact remains that this hospital said they would not be extending my contract. And my guess for the reason for this was they had a bunch of new graduate nurses coming off orientation all at the same time. So at the end of April, they were actually going to have an influx of staff. And so my guess was that they were just going to be actually fully staffed for the first time, and that's why they didn't need travelers anymore. It was still unusual to me that they weren't extending me because COVID was just now starting out, and the area in Maryland that I'm working right now was expected to peak at the end of April, beginning of May, about when my contract would be up for renewal. So I figured they would be approaching this from an attitude of we need all the help we can get, so they would have no issue with extending any contracts. That was weird, and this conversation that I was having with this person in the emergency department about extending the contract was in the middle of a conversation in which I was telling her about the issues I was having with my schedule. So my concern with them saying we're not extending your contract was also coming from a place of you're annoying us with your complaints, so that's why we're not going to be extending your contract. And while this could have been a factor, there were other travelers there that tried to extend that were also turned down, so it wasn't just me that was rejected for an extension on their contract. So that was that. I wasn't going to be getting an extension on my contract, and we still had 3 months left in our apartment lease, so we had to find another contract in the area. The way it works is I call my recruiter and say they're not going to be extending me, so I need another contract in the area. He sent me a list of contracts in the area and then kind of like a wider radius. We're just outside Baltimore right now, but all the contracts in Baltimore weren't really paying that much. But if you go to the south of Maryland, there was a high-paying contract at a hospital they actually worked at 2 years ago. That was the best-paying contract by far, so I told my recruiter to submit me for that job. By the next morning, I had a new contract signed. But that hospital is, like I said, an hour and 15 minutes from the apartment that we still have the lease on in Baltimore. And so that is the story of why I find myself now with an hour and 15-minute commute to work. That's not the frustrating part, though. The frustrating part is 2 weeks after they told me they wouldn't be extending me at this hospital, they hired 7 new travelers in the emergency room. There are theories as to why they hired on 7 new travelers as opposed to keeping the old ones. I'm not going to entertain those here. And by that time, I already had my new contract signed, so it wasn't really even an option to bring up the topic again of extending my contract at the original hospital. So that's where I find myself right now. 3 months at that hospital, 3 months at the farther away hospital, same apartment throughout those contracts. So an hour 15 is not that bad of a commute. What we're trying to do is group my 3 days together, so I only have to make that commute there and back once, and then I stay in a hotel in between the days that I'm there during the week. Even though there's a longer commute, I'm already enjoying the job because I'm not night shift anymore and I'm not working 4 days a week anymore. So working day shift, working mid shift 3 days a week, now it feels like I legitimately have 4 days off every single week, as opposed to before where it felt like I was having maybe 2 days, maybe 0 days off per week. It honestly felt like I hadn't had a good day off in 3 months, and even this week I feel like I have a legitimate 4 days off before I have to go back to work. Even though the commute is less than desirable, it is a good situation in the end, I think. I don't know what we're going to do in 3 months because there are so few travel jobs spread around the country right now with the pandemic going on. I'm hoping it starts to improve in the summer so that when I'm up for a contract in August, there are actually jobs and we might have a little bit of options of where to go. But I don't know what's going to happen. I will keep you apprised of the situation, Steven. I hope that you guys are staying safe, and as always, I hope that you post a new video on our channel soon. I will talk to you later. Bye.